Hey, hockey fans, welcome to the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Retta. You know, I've spent over 4 decades working in the game, fortunate enough to meet some of the legends of the game, saw them come into the league, watched them shine in the game, and now they've moved on to life after the game. The 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast gives us a chance to catch up, tell some great stories, relive some great memories, and hear what they're up to today. Oh, you are in for a treat today. He's one of the best American-born players in NHL history, the first American player with 500 goals and 1,000 points in his career, was undrafted, yet he still won 3 Stanley Cups, 16 seasons in the league with the Blues, the Flames, Pittsburgh Penguins, the Boston Bruins between 1980 and 1997, inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in the year 2000. Ladies and gentlemen, Joey Mullen. Joe, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Oh, very good. Thanks for having me, Gino.
So our audience, for those who don't know this, you got that thick, I love the accent. You're actually living in Cape Cod now. How did you end up in Cape Cod?
Well, I married a Boston girl. We used to come back to Boston every summer from hockey all the time. And once we started growing a family, we needed to get out of our mother's house and into our own house. So it just made sense for us to come to Cape Cod, being the type of place it is, very, very great for the summertime and the kids. And so we wound up just staying here. We love it so much.
I always find it very intriguing for somebody who's been in the game of hockey now for myself for like 4 decades or so. I always find it intriguing, the roots. And week after week, we have guys on the show like Hall of Famers, legends like yourself, Marty Brodeur, Paul Henderson and Lanny McDonald and Daryl Sittler. And we ask, and more often than not, there's stories about, I grew up skating on the pond on the farm when we were 3 years old. Your story is obviously completely different. You were born and raised in New York City's Hell's Kitchen district, not exactly known at that point as a hockey hotbed, more known for the Gambino crime family in your neighborhood than anything else. Tell our audience a little bit about your upbringing and where you grew up.
Well, I grew up, like you said, in the Hell's Kitchen section of New York. The old Madison Square Garden was right up the street from us. So that's where I think we got started with hockey. Plus, our dads and uncles and everything, everybody like that played roller hockey, and they loved the game of hockey. So my dad was actually working at Madison Square Garden at the time. And, he was part of the ice crew there for many years, up until he died pretty much. And then, so he used to bring us home sticks and, that's where we grew our love for the game, by the Rangers being right up the street there. And, we started with roller hockey, and that's where we played probably our most hockey in our early years. And then I was about 10 years old before I put on ice skates.
That's amazing, Joey. You didn't even hit the ice with skates until you were 10.
Correct. Yeah. That's we didn't have much ice in the neighborhood, so you had to travel, if you wanted to do that. And none of our parents had cars living in the city, so we had a lot of cement and concrete. So we roller skated and played hockey on roller skates.
It's interesting because at that point, when you were a kid, Emile Francis was the general manager of the New York Rangers, the legendary hockey man and builder that he was. And he kind of, I guess, in seeing what you and other kids in New York City were doing and going through, kind of played a role in starting a league for you kids to develop. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, he must have been having a hard day one time, and he was in Madison Square Garden. He says, I just got to go for a walk. So he walked outside. He seen a bunch of kids skating down the street, and he followed them. And there was the New York School of Printing. It was right across the street from where I lived. And he just watched us play hockey for a while. I remember him standing up there just watching us, and we all knew who he was, and we were excited. So we were trying to step it up and put on a show for him. But he just figured, why can't we get all these kids that are playing roller hockey on the ice? And he went and he got some people together and formed a league. I think his kids were playing ice hockey in out in Long Island, Long Beach, Long Island at the time. And so they started junior league there. And I just kind of followed my brothers into the junior league.
It's amazing. We're in conversation with Hockey Hall of Famer, three-time Stanley Cup champion, Joe Mullen. There's nowadays you get the choice of which way you want to go through your route in developing hockey, whether you go through major, junior, or make your way through. And more, we're seeing guys turn to the college route. When you played, it really wasn't for most kids at that point, it really wasn't what you did. It was what you had to do when you had to do it. And you ended up at Boston College, which turned out to be a phenomenal situation for you. How did you end up going to school at Boston and playing on a partial ride, I guess, initially there, and then a full ride later? How did that transition happen for you?
Yeah, well, I was just, like I said, I was playing in the junior league at the time. I was probably 16, 17. And Lenny Siglowski had heard about us. He was the coach at BC. He came down to the city, watched us play, started to recruit me. And, I had a choice, try Division I, or I could easily have gone Division II. My brother Tom was already at AIC in Springfield, Mass, and a bunch of guys from the neighborhood were also there. So I could have went there. But BC was my only Division I school that recruited me. So it was a hard decision, but I said, I got to take a chance, So I went to BC and loved every minute of it. It was just a great spot for me. I got to play a lot and right away, and it got me started.
It's interesting because the world has changed so dramatically now. Now to see an American go early in the draft, no surprise at all. To see an American from the desert, Austin Matthews, go first overall, no surprise at all. Like, it's just the world we live in right now. But in your day, you went undrafted and you were eligible in the 1979 draft and you were undrafted. It was a completely different mentality back then when it came to U.S. born players. Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, well, it was, when I was going into the professional ranks, it was kind of known that, it was supposed to be known that the Canadians didn't care for the Americans coming into the league and stuff. But, I went to the tryouts in Salt Lake City for the St. Louis Blues. Actually, Emile Francis signed me to my first contract when he was GM of the St. Louis Blues. And, I went to camp and, it was like, just feel things out, but everybody was great. I mean, I didn't see anything like that, where, there was any animosity towards the American guys. Maybe there still was, but I didn't see it, and, I just focused on my game, playing my game and trying to make the team. And luckily I made the Salt Lake team, which was the top farm team of the Blues at the time. And I had my ups and downs a little bit early in the season, but I got it kind of straightened out, and wound up being rookie of the year in the league that year. So it was a good start to my career, and gave me a lot of confidence going into the following years.
You're one of the great stories, because one of the great lines in the movie that was made about the Miracle on Ice was, why isn't Joey Mullen here?
Yeah.
Explain
Well,
this
yeah,
story for our
they
audience
kind
that
of
may
made
not
it
know this,
sound
because
like
again,
I
it's
was just after
79.
the money,
Yeah. Well, you're a
But,
popular guy at this point.
uh,
Everybody knows you can score goals. They were creating the Miracle on Ice Team USA for our audience, younger audience. That was built mostly of college kids, very few NHLers at that point. That's the way. I mean, that was the way it was built in 1980. And you were like this close to being a part of that team. Walk us through that story.
yeah, well, actually, in '79, I went to the World Cups um, in Russia with
Yeah.
USA, and most of the guys that you're talking about that were on that team, and we had a pretty decent, showing there, and the U.S. team was still interested in me and stuff, but my dad got sick, so I kind of took it upon myself to, you know, try to help the family out if needed, So uh, I turned pro and bypassed the Olympics.
And it was an interesting time for you, because making that transition, you actually end up spending 2.5 years. You mentioned Salt Lake, at that point, the Central Hockey League, where it was difficult, I think, for you to make the step into the NHL. And I never really understood it, because you seem to be the goal scorer. You seem to have all the talent and prowess to make that jump. And yet, for whatever reason, it wasn't happening. What happened in that era? How do you break that down in your mind? I mean, given where you ended up in your career, it's mind-boggling that it took an extra 2.5 years and you went undrafted to make it to the league.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, the first year I was rookie of the year. Second year I was the MVP of the league that year, and I was still down in Salt Lake, and I'm just thinking, well, just play out your contract, see what happens your third year, and if nothing happens, maybe you go home or maybe you go somewhere else. But things started happening in my third year, and I got the call up finally, and got my first couple of goals there, so it kind of gave me even more confidence. And
Okay, don't skirt by that quickly. Your first couple of goals, there's a story about that. Why don't you tell our audience about your first two NHL goals?
yeah, well, the first one we were it was in the first period against Minnesota North Stars, and I was lucky enough to bank one off the goalie from behind the net and went in, and then we went back putting the face off, and 8 seconds later I got the puck again and was in the net. So it was pretty thrilling to get 2 goals in 8 seconds. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
You had an opportunity to play with a good friend of mine, Dougie Gilmore, and you were rooming with Bernie Federko. When you finally make that step up after those 2.5 year long battle, and all of a sudden you're in an NHL dressing room and you're seeing these guys, you're like, holy mackerel, I've been watching these guys for years, and now I'm in this room with them. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, just the best feeling in the world. You're like, you're nervous. You got all kinds of emotions going. You want to get out there and play, and but you're in awe of most of the guys in the room. And but once I get on the ice, I can kind of let that go and just concentrate on what I'm supposed to be doing and hopefully do it the right way.
It was interesting because it didn't take you, once you caught on, obviously 2 goals in 8 seconds. It was a pretty amazing way to start your NHL career, but it wasn't just a blip. Sometimes that happens with a guy and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, but now we know what he's about. Well, in your first 4 NHL seasons, you had 240+ goal years with the St. Louis Blues. So the transition, obviously, once you were established, and you had 4+seasons with the St. Louis Blues, and then you were dealt to the Calgary Flames in 1986. How did that come about, and how did you feel about that?
Well, yeah, it came about because I was sitting out that first training camp,
Yeah.
that fourth training camp, I should say, because over a contract dispute. So
Yeah.
I was home, and and they were all at camp, and it was a weird feeling being home at that time, and not being there. So, but they didn't want to pay the money, and Harry Orness was the owner at the time, and you know what do you do? You either sit out, or you could give up and take what they offer. And I decided that I'll sit it out and see what happens. And then I got a call from Ron Karan, and he said they'll give me the extra money I wanted. And then but I said, if I take this, you're not going to trade me, are you? Oh, no, no, no. Well, that trade came about. They said Mrs. Orness wasn't too happy with them paying me $50,000 more than I wanted. They wanted, so I got traded. But in the long run, to look back on it, it was probably the best thing that happened to me. Going to Calgary that year and playing up there. We went to the finals that first year. That was real exciting, and a very good learning experience for the whole team. And then fortunately we got another chance at it in '89, and beat Montreal that year. Well, we lost to Montreal in '86, but beat them in '89.
I want to get to '89 in a minute, but first let's start with '86. So now you move into a market, Calgary, where it's hockey crazy to begin with. And now this young guy comes in who was supposed to be a goal scorer and is a goal scorer. You made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final where you played the Habs. You had 12. You led the Flames with 12 goals in the Stanley Cup final. What was that like, both on the ice in that room and also in the community for Joey Mullen as a young goal scorer at that point?
Well, in the community at first, like just getting off the plane and I'm walking through the airport, and nothing to read on me that says I'm a hockey player or anything. I'm just walking through the airport going to get my luggage, and people are walking by me, just going wherever they're going, and they're saying, "Hey, Joey, welcome." And I'm like, how do they know it's me? So it was kind of like you're an instant celebrity, and that was kind of hard to take for a while. It just people, you go in a store and people are saying, "Hey, Joey," so I'm like, I don't even know these people, but but it worked out well. And then as far as the team goes, they made me feel right at home. Great people up there. Great team headed
Joe,
by
you were scoring goals. What did you think was going to happen? If you came in there and you were a flop, then okay, I get it. But you scored 47, 40, and 51 goals in your first few seasons of the Calgary Flames. And then you had 16 to lead all players for the Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup final. And you guys won the Stanley Cup in 1989. What was that entire experience like for you?
That was awesome. I mean, losing to Montreal the first time and then getting a second chance to play them again in the finals was, I think that's what we needed. And we needed a reason. We needed some revenge on that. And it was just great hockey. They're a great team. And it was hard fought. And once you get out of battles like that, you kind of realize how good hockey is. It's you really got to put out a lot to win the cup, and what a great feeling. A dream come true for any kid that puts on skates and wants to play hockey at that type of level.
I talk about the guys you played with. I want to briefly talk about a guy you played for, one of the legends of the game. He was your early coach for the Calgary Flames when he was there. But then once you got dealt to Calgary, he moved on to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Not surprisingly, he started making noise saying, I want Joe Mullen on this team. And that ended up happening. Tell our listeners who I'm talking about and how that entire process went through.
Well, that coach was Bob Johnson, and I got to know Mark Johnson at the '79 World Championships,
Yeah.
and my brother Brian had gone to Wisconsin, recruited by Bob Johnson. So I got to know Bob at a couple of the Canada Cups and everything like that. Just a great man, great coach. He really installed a lot in my game, helping me out, especially on the power play and stuff like that. And he was just he always had a reason for everything, whether you believed him or not. But if you trusted him, he was usually right, and you just follow his directions a lot. And he made the game simple. He always made it fun. He made practices fun, but you're working hard every day too. And he used to be on the bus, and we'd be passing by these workers that are, digging trenches in the street, and then you go, "Hey guys, look at that. Could be us out there." He goes, "But where are we going? We're going to the rink for 1 hour, and we're gonna work." And he just had such a enthusiasm about the game, and that's the one thing I wanted to take when I started coaching.
Yeah. And it worked for you. Then you went on to be an assistant coach for years afterwards because of so much stuff you learned from them. Mm-hmm. So now you land in Pittsburgh. Not a bad team.
No, pretty good spot to be in right at that time.
A pretty good time. It's 1991. You did have a bit of an issue though. You had that herniated disc, which I'm guessing it's not herniated disc in 1990-91 is not like a herniated disc in 23. In 23, you do the laser. There's no issues, no problems. In 91, you're real nervous about this because you don't know how this is going to turn out. The whole technology in that is, what was that like for you to go through that serious, at that point, would have been a serious injury?
Yeah. I was thinking I was done. And then I asked the doctor, I said, could it be fixed? And he says, yeah. He goes, it's going to take some time. I said, how much time? He goes, about 8 weeks. I went, really? And he said, yeah. So, I had the operation. As soon as I had the operation, my neck felt so much better. And, but I knew I had to, work on the shoulders and the neck muscles to get back, and which I did. And, 8 weeks to the day, I was back playing in the playoffs. So, and
contributing significantly. What was that? What are your memories? What are your takeaways in the 91 Stanley Cup run?
Just playing Jersey that first series. Going 7 games and Frankie Pietrangelo making that great save on Peter Stastny with the wide open net. Peter put it right in his glove, and Frankie was diving backwards and caught the puck. And if he doesn't make that save, it's the game was over. I think it was overtime at the time. Yeah. And then we go on to win that series, and then we just got rolling after that.
If I remember correctly, and correct if I'm wrong, I think you played most of the time with Ronnie Francis and Jaromir Jagr, a couple of pretty talented guys.
Yeah. Well, for 1 year it was Ronnie and Kevin Stevens, and then it was Ronnie and Jagr. So I couldn't go wrong. I mean, even on that team, you had the first 3 centers were Mario, Ronnie, and Brian Trottier.
Tell us, for people who watch, I mean, I've been following the game for so many years right now, and the memories I have of Mario, because he skated so effortlessly. There were so many times we just thought he's not even trying, because it looked like he wasn't trying because his strides were so long and his reach was so long, and yet the stuff he was able to do was, I mean, he was Super Mario.
Yeah.
What was it like day in, day out to be able to see that up close?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It was like some days were tough because when he's coming in, he can hardly walk. You're like, oh my God, we need this guy. We got to get him ready. He'd be hurting, and then the next thing you know, he's on the ice, and he gets on the ice, and like you said, you look at him skating, and he hardly even touches the ice. He's so smooth, and the hands, he never loses the hands. He could be out 3 months and be like, the hands would be there, the skating would be there. And he was Super Mario.
We're in conversation with Joe Mullen, Hockey Hall of Famer and 3-time Stanley Cup champion. You went on to win another Stanley Cup with the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. But want to ask you about a special moment. And I know you're very, very close in your family. You are a real family guy. You always have been. That's always been very important for you. When you talked about the finances, a big part of the finances for you was to feel like you could help the family and take care of the family. The All Star Game at Madison Square Garden, which still gives me tingles thinking about it. The whole full circle that was 1994 MSG back in where it all started for you and your brother. Tell us about that.
Well, that was really special, being that Dad was still working at that time, and being able to walk into that building and play an all-star game and have friends and family there, and a great part of my career, a great memory of my career, and I got to play with Messier and Graves. That wasn't too bad either. But, it was just a thrill to be able to do that in your hometown.
Listen, it's one thing to be a part of something like that, but you weren't just a part of it. You were a very, very significant contributor, as evidenced by the fact you're a Hockey Hall of Famer. Are there times where you kind of just pinch yourself and I can't believe this all happened for two guys who grew up as stick boys and hanging around the Zamboni at MSG? Now you look at your closet and go, holy mackerel, there's all these jerseys of teams I played for. There's 3 Stanley Cups. I'm a Hockey Hall of Famer. You had to share that with your whole family. What's that like when you reflect back on something like that?
Yeah, I kind of reflect back on it, and I would say, why me? Why this all happened to me? I seen so many great hockey players in that neighborhood and in the area of New York, and not them. Why me? But I always had a love for the game. I still do. I play 2 or 3 times a week now, so still on the ice quite a bit, and that's all year round too. I wonder why, but I think I know why too. Because I put the time and the effort into it my whole life. So I think that's the biggest reason I got to do what I did.
How much did you enjoy going back? You ended up as a free agent with the Boston Bruins back. You went to Boston College. What was that experience like being back there so many years later?
Yeah, it was I always wanted to play for an original 6 team, and wound up being Boston and coming back to Boston. That was great. You spent the 4 years at BC there, and I loved every minute of it, like I said earlier. But to be able to come back and play in front of the fans there was a thrill for me. Unfortunately, I was hurt quite a bit that year, but so it didn't work out quite the way I was hoping. But but it was still a thrill to come back and play for that team. And now, being an alumnus of the team, I get to play with the alumni team, and They played quite a few games. We played like maybe a 35 game season, starting
Wow.
in the yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's mostly charity games and everything. But I just got home from Detroit. We played Detroit's alumni this past weekend, and that was fun. That was a real good time, and both teams had a blast doing it.
Is it nice telling stories when you get back together with the guys?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like you pick up right where you left off, with former teammates and friends and people, that you got to know through the games and stuff.
That's awesome. 96, 97, you finally decided it's time to hang them up, and you did it with the Pittsburgh Penguins, which makes sense. You won a couple of Stanley Cups with them. You had some of your best years with them. What was it like, the emotion saying, you obviously still love the game. You're still playing 3 times a week. You're still playing all the alumni games, but where you had to walk away from the game in the NHL, what was that like when you had to make that? How did you make that decision?
I think my body made it for me. The knees were going. The neck injuries took away most of my upper body strength and stuff like that. So I could feel it coming. I kind of hung in there just to try to get the 500 goal, and it was like I still wanted to play. I just knew it's probably not the right thing, so it's time to hang them up as far as the NHL went.
So you went away for a little while, but then you came right back as an assistant coach. And you were there for 5 years, I guess, of the Pens, and then you were with the Flyers coaching staff. Oh man, for probably over another decade and stuff.
Yeah, well, the Flyers. Yeah.
What was that experience like, coaching?
I enjoyed it. I was really nervous in the beginning because we still had Mario on the team and Yager, and I was just doing the power play basically. So how do you tell those guys we have Ronnie still, and that kind of took care of itself. But I learned a lot doing it with that team, and how to work with guys and stuff like that. So that was definitely a learning experience for me. And I was there like 5 years, I think, with the Penguins coaching, and then I went to Philly after that. And spent 12 years with them. So it was a lot easier, I think, in Philly because I dealt with all those superstar players in Pittsburgh.
Joey, it's been so great catching up with you, and it sounds like you're still very healthy and still very active, and that's all great to hear. It's just excellent. Will you play a game with me? You play 5 fast facts with me?
Okay, I'll try.
I'll ask you 5 questions, just rapid fire. First thing that comes to your mind when you hear this, okay? All right, let's play 5 fast facts with Hockey Hall of Famer, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, Joey Mullen. I think I know the answer to this one. The best teammate you ever played with, who was that?
Lanny McDonald.
Wow, I thought you were going to go Mario, but Lanny McDonald.
Well, yeah, you know what? It was, it's a tough choice to pick either one of them. Yeah. But I think, Lanny was kind of the ultimate captain. He was just he was there for not that Mario wasn't, but it's just I don't know. It was something about Lanny that he was a leader all the way. And Mario led more by example. And I think Lanny was like more the vocal type, and
Great man. I've had him on the show. Yeah. He's a wonderful human being and the best mustache in the history of the NHL.
By talking, Mario did all his reeling in and talking on the ice. He reeled us in as soon as he put on the skates. Tough choice, but
fair enough. But a good choice. Best coach you ever played for?
Bob Johnson.
No doubt. Who did you hate playing against the most, and why?
Probably the Montreal Canadiens because of their system, you know.
Fair enough. Your favorite city, NHL city to play in?
Chicago.
The barn, eh? The old building was spectacular. If you hadn't become an NHL player, what do you think you would have ended up doing as a career?
I'd probably be in like trying to think of it now, the theatrical, because pretty much
an actor?
No. As a stagehand or something, because most of the guys from my neighborhood are on the theatrical and stuff like that in New York. So I probably would have wound up there. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I did not see that one coming. I got to tell you, Joey, I did not see that one coming.
Acting, no.
But moving the props around, I get that.
Yeah.
Hey, Joey, I'm so glad you're doing so well, and you look like you're still very, very happy and in great shape. This has been so much fun catching up with you again.
Thank you, Gino. It's good to see you too.
3-time Stanley Cup champion, Hockey Hall of Famer, one of the greatest American-born players in NHL history, Joe Mullen. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by 7-Eleven. Before leaving the rink, order your favorite Slurpee, fresh 100% premium Arabica coffee, hot from the oven pizza and wings, pint of ice cream, or even a carton of milk, a dozen eggs, and a loaf of bread from the 7 Now app. And Team 7-Eleven will have your order ready for pickup 24/7. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca, where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. 7-Eleven's Overtime Podcast can be found on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Until next week, I'm Gino Reda saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast.